Welcome the chosen ones. The devil doesn't mind who you appear to be. When you quit acting foolish, he trembles at who you really are. Allow that to soak in, because today we're drawing the curtains all the way back. Here's what they won't confess out loud. They underestimated you. Not because you kept silent. Not because you were kind. But because you made them believe they were winning. And now they're pacing the floor, erasing messages, cleaning up their trails, and wondering, how the heck could the chosen one know everything before it happened? Here is a fun fact. Psychologists discovered that those who are inherently perceptive may identify fraud more quickly than educated specialists. But you selected one. You did not require a degree in behavioral science. You were reading spirits like subtitles in a movie that they assumed you didn't comprehend. Let us be honest. You did an excellent job playing the idiot. They handed you front row tickets to their own demise. And now they look at you as if you're the villain since you didn't flinch when the mask dropped. The greatest thing is they still have no idea how much you know. They merely saw the tip of your awareness. And this alone struck shockwaves into their ego. So brace up, because in this video we'll explain why your accuracy wasn't chance. It was heavenly intellect. Why your quiet was not confusing. It was a cosmic approach. And why now? After all of their manipulation, lies, and spiritual gymnastics, they're the ones who can't sleep because you knew all along. And no, we're not whispering today. We're pulling receipts, peeling layers, and slinging some holy shade. Let's get to it. Number 1, you did not read them. You remembered them. You did not need to examine them. You didn't sit there wondering what they meant when they said or did anything. Deep down you knew. The reality is you were not figuring them out. You were remembering them. Something about their energy, tone, gaze, and little deliberate motions aroused an old alarm in your soul. It wasn't new. It was familiar. It's as if your spirit has seen these patterns before. In a different body, a different era, maybe even a different lifetime. What surprised them wasn't simply that you caught on. It's that you knew too much without having evidence. And the portion that causes the greatest confusion in their minds. You never needed them to confess. You never needed someone to warn you. You did not go through their phone. You did not eavesdrop. You were under no obligation to conduct an investigation. You just felt it. Your spirit had gotten the file long before their mask shattered. That's what makes your accuracy so unnerving. It does not feel natural to them, as if you were psychic. But for you, it's just how your talent works. Quietly and fiercely, deeply, what they sought to keep buried. Your energy was drawn to the surface without even trying. That is why they are so thrown off. They assumed you were unaware. They misunderstood your quiet for naivete. They saw your grace as weakness. But suddenly they discovered they'd been strolling about nude the whole time. Not physically, but spiritually. And you saw it. You noticed the envy. You spotted the falsehoods. You saw the disdain underneath the phony politeness. You read them as if they were old stories. You have already completed. And you said nothing. That's what gets under their skin. You did not reveal them immediately away. You just watched. Allow them to perform. Allow them to feel protected. Meanwhile, your spirit was already chronicling everything. Not for vengeance, but to clarify. You didn't have to shout the truth. You became it. Number 2, their masks did not slide. You saw through them from the beginning. They believe their mask slipped. And that is how you found out. They are confident they made one mistake. They were discovered after just one false fib. But you saw through them from the beginning. Not halfway through. Not after the harm. From the start, you refused to fall for the act. You just opted not to reveal it immediately. And that calm, determined decision to let them think they had you deceived. That is what haunts them today, since they had no idea you were awake when they were acting. You weren't emotionally engaged. You didn't expect them to be different. You were watching, observing, and taking in every detail like a codebreaker. They had no idea they were being watched by someone with non-human sight. You were locked in with spiritual vision. That kind of vision is not taught. It is embedded. It's integrated into the selected ones like a second skin. What surprises them today is the accuracy of your recall. You recall what they were wearing, how they looked at you, and the tone they used while lying. The fact that you never confronted them then. But now you say it with accuracy. They are unable to contradict. They expected you to be resentful. They did not expect you to be accurate. You were not emotional. You were surgical. You let the facts accumulate in quiet. They misjudged your calmness. They assumed it meant you were blind, but the calm was really control. You were not confused. You were gathering evidence. You were not in the dark. You were giving them enough rope to reveal who they really were. And they did, over and over again. They now realize you didn't miss anything. That is the portion that is eating them alive. They believe they had the upper hand, but now they know. They never had control. You were only giving them room to bury themselves tastefully. Number 3, you let them lie to see how far they could go. You weren't desperate for the truth. You already knew it. You just wanted to test how far their falsehoods would go, how far they were willing to go the act. They never anticipated that. They assumed you were waiting for answers, bewildered, lost in your thoughts, attempting to put everything together. But you were really witnessing them create their own trap methodically, confidently, and with a phony grin on their face. You gave them space. You were calculating, not naive. You wanted to know how far they would go to betray you while claiming to care. That's what is rattling them right now. You did not address them with tears or wrath. You did not plead for honesty. You repeatedly allowed them to lie. You listened to their explanations, knowing they were fabricated. You nodded, gave a blank expression, and mentally noted everything. You were tranquil, yet underneath that serenity was a razor-sharp alertness. They misunderstood your silence as acceptance, but you were observing, evaluating, and assessing how brave they had gotten in the face of your silence. They are now recognizing you were not in denial. You were recording their personality. You were not waiting for an apology. You were waiting for a confirmation. You didn't flinch as they crossed the finish line. You did not respond. You just closed the case. That worries them more than an explosion would, because they now realize you did not capture them by mistake. You let them lie to see whether they still had a soul. Spoiler alert, they didn't. You wanted to see who they truly were, even if they believed you were still in the dark. The disgrace now extends beyond the fact that they were discovered. You were watching the whole time. They had no idea it was this chilly. That degree of calm and intelligence. It is not typical. It is spiritual authority. And they now see you weren't blind. You were 10 steps ahead. The whole darn time. Number 4, your precision is frightening since you extracted truth from the unknown. You weren't connecting the dots. They didn't see you coming. You did not overhear anything. Nobody warned you. Nobody slipped up. And yet, when you opened your lips, the truth came out precisely. They can't explain. That's what makes them shake. Not only did you expose them, but you did it with no access to their talks, secrets, or strategies. You did not require tangible proof. You took it straight from the unknown. They don't grasp that. You were not guessing. You were receiving up energy like signals from a secret radio station while they were busy fabricating falsehoods, constructing illusions, and pulling strings behind closed doors. You were quietly tapping into something. They do not believe in your heavenly connection. And the link is not lost. It does not stammer. It doesn't require assistance. You could come into a room, feel energy change, and quickly know who was on your side and who was lying. That is not a talent. That is a gift. They believe they could outwit you, but you didn't use reasoning. You were functioning on revelation. You said stuff no one else knew. You addressed questions that they never asked. You addressed falsehoods they had not yet uttered. That is not simply awareness. That is spiritual correctness. And it's terrible for those who wear masks because it implies they have nowhere to hide. What worries them isn't just that you were correct. It's that you wouldn't have realized what you did unless you were linked to something greater. You did not need receipts. You were the receipt. And now every time you talk, they feel vulnerable because they recognize they're not dealing with just anybody. They were dealing with someone who was spiritually tuned, divinely directed, and deeply connected. Even their quiet could not hide their trails. And this is what truly bothers them. The knowledge did not originate from you. It went through you. Number 5, you are not a danger since you have exposed them. You are a menace since you accomplished it effortlessly. You never raised your voice. You never ran a slander campaign. You did not toss dirt. You did not ask for validation. And you didn't attempt to persuade anybody of what was really going on. You just observed what was to be seen and let the facts speak for themselves. This is what makes you dangerous. Not because you were loud, but because you weren't bothered. You shattered the illusion they were hiding behind, not with rage, but with clarity. They weren't prepared for it. They assumed power looked like control. They believed it sprang from manipulation, alliances, secrets, and fear. But you strolled in with calm awareness and completely wrecked their business without even trying. You didn't shatter them aggressively. You destroyed the illusion of who they're supposed to be. And that is terrible. Because they now have to accept that you did not need retribution to win. You did not even raise a hand. All it needed was your truth, voiced or unspoken. And the whole house of cards began to collapse. Mercy is what truly gets to them. You demonstrated the possibility that you might have humiliated them. You could have revealed all you had, every spiritual receipt, intuitive strike, and energy confirmation. You were sitting on the entire truth, but you moved away softly and gracefully. That type of power is unsettling to those who are used to controlling the narrative. They can't get their heads around it because they know if the positions were reversed, they'd destroy you. But you did not play dirty. You chose restraint. They are no longer only terrified of your understanding. They are terrified of your character because that level of self-control does not come from weakness. It stems from mastery. And they've discovered something they won't say out loud. You are not dangerous because you harm others. You're dangerous because you don't need to. Despite this, the truth continues to burn them. Number 6, they discovered too late that you were doing a spiritual autopsy. They felt they could get away with it. Fake affection, small underhanded jabs, and concealed envy beneath praises. They assumed it was all going beneath your radar. But you spent the whole time gathering facts, not for drama or vengeance. You were doing a spiritual autopsy, analyzing every motive, phrase, and glance. You were not confused. You were exact. While they were busy acting, you quietly pulled receipts. Emotional, spiritual, and energetic. They assumed you were inactive, but you were really chronicling the demise of allegiance in real time. What makes matters worse is that you did not respond when they expected you to. You did not blow up. You did not break down. You did not flinch. You just noticed the quiet. It was not ignorance. It was an observation. Every gesture they made reinforced what your soul already understood. You saw the rot beneath the grin. You heard the poison in the jest. You identified sabotage disguised as assistance. And you maintained your calm even while their actions piled up like evidence in a locked folder. So when you eventually talked, you didn't come out angry. You arrived with precision. You did not yell. You clipped your remarks and did not strike like an accusation. They hit like precision blows, showing precisely what they had intended to conceal. They believed you'd forgotten. They believed that time eradicated their actions, but your soul preserved the record. And when the time came, you dissected them, not with bitterness, but with a keen clarity that stripped them spiritually bare. They were ready to confront falsehoods. They were unprepared to confront the truth, particularly when it was stated without passion, effort, or reluctance. That is what bothers them today. You didn't just call them out. You verified who they were with icy precision. It pushed them to finally recognize themselves. And the worst part, you did not need to lie to damage them. You just stated the truth. Number 7. You did not anticipate the pattern. You were the variable that they could not calculate. They were used to controlling the show. Same movements, mental tricks, and responses. They had folks follow a formula. Press this button. Receive this answer. Incite envy, control the narrative, and create mayhem. Play the victim. It worked every time until you. You did not respond as they anticipated. You didn't seek clarification. You did not struggle for their attention. And you did not collapse beneath their quiet. You were not activated by the bait. You just stood there, grounded and inscrutable. And it was what shook them to the core. They believed they'd mastered the pattern. However, you were the variable that broke the code. They were unprepared for the wild card. You were not scared to walk away in the middle of a conversation. You were not swayed by flattery, guilt trips, or phony emotional breakdowns. You did not succumb to their subtle hostility. You observed, digested, and moved appropriately. And it worried them because it implied you were operating from a location they had no access to. When things became desperate, they attempted every tactic they could think of: confusion, projection, guilt, and even flattery. But none of it worked because you didn't respond. You were discerning. You were not trapped in their cycle. You were watching it whirl. And this made you unpredictable. They couldn't understand why their approaches didn't work with you. Why weren't you pursuing closure or approval? The truth: you were never in the game. You were the dollar to terminate it. And now they're all jumbled. Not only did they lose control, but they had never had it in the first place. You never fell under their spell. You were only seeing how far they'd take it. That's the bit that bothers them the most. You did not outplay them. You demolished the whole board silently and forcefully, without touching a single piece. They assumed you were lost. They viewed your stillness for uncertainty, your serenity for weakness, and your lack of response as confirmation that they were still in charge. However, while they were manipulating your patience, luring you with backhanded insults, and pressuring you to snap, you were studying them like a map. Every word, gesture, and movement in their energy was reflecting on them. And you were reading everything without breaking a sweat. The blank look they laughed about was not detachment. That was analysis. You were doing something they didn't know was occurring. While they were busy acting, you were picking up on the script, the purpose behind the words, and the frequency underlying the cacophony. You were not checked out. You were calculating, silently picking when and where to focus your energy, carefully choosing not to answer, not because you were hesitant, but because you knew how it would all end. They continued attempting to cause a breakdown, but you handed them mirrors instead. You did not argue. You did not defend yourself. You let them expose themselves repeatedly while you remained anchored. And it worries them now, since in retrospect, it's clear you weren't responding because you'd already seen the whole layout. You knew who they were, long before they discovered who you truly were. They're now uncomfortable since they can't rediscover the lost moment. That is the most haunting part. There's no explosion, no big unveiling, simply a methodical, quiet disintegration of every play they believed they were winning before realizing the game was over. You were already many stages ahead, emotionally detached, spiritually aligned, and far gone. They did not lose because they played incorrectly. They lost because they did not understand. You were not playing. You were monitoring the whole time, giving them the impression that they had the upper hand while, in fact, they were playing a game you had previously decided on in your head. Number 8. Your quietness was due to calculation, not bewilderment. Pushing buttons to watch you lose your cool while they were busy attempting to bait you was not a sign of uncertainty or weakness. That quiet, steady look was not empty. It was calculated. You were calmly watching, taking in every tiny clue, micro-expression, and secret motive. Your mind was working behind the scenes, piecing together their objectives the way a great strategist would analyze a chessboard. They believed that if they could rile you up and make you emotional, you would lose control and therefore gain an advantage. Instead, you stood your ground and received considerably more profound insight. You were not responding. You were planning. You were calculating their movements, 5 steps ahead, anticipating their techniques and planning your reaction in ideal time. They are now shocked as the reality begins to set in. Too late. The game ended before they even knew it had begun. They did their role, blindly falling into the trap you set with your quiet and stillness. Their attempts to disrupt you just increased your awareness. That understanding became your strength. Your silence was not empty. It indicated that you were always in charge, always several moves ahead, and this is the type of expertise that astounds them. Because you didn't just endure their techniques. You took them apart gently, systematically, and with an unwavering calm that shouted more than any outcry ever could. Number 9. They're just now realizing that you were the mirror, not the adversary. They came into your life with the intention of manipulating you, just as they have done with everyone else. The same methods, the same phony charm, the same psychological tricks. But they didn't expect to be seen completely, profoundly, and without effort. You were not playing offense or defense. You were just standing there in your truth. And the fact that you didn't fight them was enough to fracture their masks. It mirrored them. Every lie they said, every fake identity they formed, and every ego-driven maneuver they attempted to use against you. Everything reflected back at them like a spiritual mirror. They were unable to flee. They're simply discovering you didn't curse them. You did not hex them. You did not go after them. You did not have to. The decline they are facing is a mirror of themselves, catching up with them. You merely existed. And in doing so, you held up a mirror so starkly clear that people couldn't look at you without seeing aspects of themselves they'd spent years concealing. Your candor did not expose them. It triggered their own self-destruction. That is why they are furious. Not because you did anything to them, but because you didn't. It still unraveled everything. You did not raise your voice. You did not beg to be believed. You just lived in harmony. You did not descend to their level. You stood in your own light, and the brightness burnt them. Not because you intended it, but because they were shrouded in darkness. They had not dealt with. You were not the villain. You were the mirror. The one who made them stop lying to themselves. Now they can't quit thinking about you. Not out of love. Not out of hatred. But because being around you forced them to confront the aspects of themselves that they had tried so hard to ignore. You did not ruin their illusion. Their own reflection did. You were the only one bold enough to grasp the glass. Number 10. Your soul conducted surveillance without cameras, cables, or effort. They assumed that in order to apprehend them, proof would be required, including images, messages, witnesses, and physical evidence. But you were working at a whole other level. Your soul maintained vigilance. No one else had access. No cameras, no cables, and no digital trace. Simply pure, impenetrable intuition that captured everything in real time. Every lie, treachery, and sideways look was recorded deep within. You like timestamp film that no one can remove. This hallowed recording device was not something you could switch on or off. It was constantly running softly, observing, comprehending, and remembering. Even while your face seemed tranquil, your soul remained awake, gathering information, fitting together the jigsaw of who they really were and what they were capable of. And since this monitoring was spiritual, it was beyond their control. They could delete communications, deny conversations, and gaslight others, but they could never remove your soul's memories. So when you eventually spoke, it was not based on hearsay or half-truths. You came prepared with invisible receipts, the sort that cut through falsehoods like a knife. Your statements were neither guesses nor accusations. They were affirmations backed up by a quiet witness inside you who witnessed everything happen. That's why your precision terrified them off. It was neither paranoia nor chance. There was heavenly assurance. And that conviction is what leaves them dumbfounded, because they understand that no matter how hard they attempt to hide their tracks in the physical world, the truth is already encoded within your soul and playing on repeat. You do not need their permission to talk. You do not need their help to uncover the truth. Your internal monitoring system has already done its job, and their secrets are now revealed in ways they never believed imaginable. Number, they labeled you paranoid until everything you stated came true. They rolled their eyes when you spoke up. They murmured behind your back, dubbing you neurotic or overthinking every time you said anything that didn't seem right. They shrugged it aside as if it were nothing. Just let your imagination go wild. But you knew better. You weren't just guessing or circulating rumors. Your spirit was tuned into something deeper and unseen to their narrow vision. You were tied to a chronology, a supernatural stream that they couldn't comprehend. You were not forecasting random events. You sensed the unavoidable revelation of facts they urgently wished buried. And that's why, even when they ridiculed you, you remained calm since you didn't want their praise. Prophecy does not seek for permission. It just discloses. Well, your warnings. They were not threats. They were communications from a source beyond their comprehension, pointing to what was ahead. Now, as the parts come into place, they're trying to keep up. They're astonished, perplexed, and even afraid. I'm curious how you saw everything without inside knowledge. The solution is simple but deep. You were not working from their narrow viewpoint. You were acting from a divine posture, so perfectly linked with the unfolding of destiny that you spoke with conviction rather than fear or fiction. Their astonishment gave way to terror as they realized the same things they rejected as psychosis were realities they couldn't ignore. They misjudged your connection, depth, and clarity. And that is why, when your statements come true one after the other, the shock isn't limited to what you already knew. It is about how profoundly you were linked to a source that never lies, hesitates, or fails. That is not psychic. That is spiritual mastery. A number. You were not seeking the truth. You were the truth in the room. They suspected you were searching for secrets, poking about, looking for anything to use against them. They assumed you were playing detective or stirring the pot. But here's the deal. Truth does not need to pursue itself. It does not have to dig or pry. Truth just is. It exists effortlessly. And when it's in the same place, everything else either comes into the light or fades into the shadows. Your presence was not a search party. It was a spotlight. Their lifestyles revealed themselves without you saying anything. Simply being there in the room did not require you to question, accuse, or confront it. You revealed what they were concealing. Their facade crumbled because they hadn't planned for someone who wasn't caught up in the web of lies. Someone so inherently honest that their own dishonesty could not be hidden. That's what blows their heads. They weren't prepared to be around someone whose spirit was clean enough to reveal their own muck without saying a word. It didn't matter what you said or did. It was about your whole existence. Communicate worked. You were a walking truth bomb, and their efforts to conceal or twist their lies failed the instant you stepped there. They believed they had control by keeping things unclear, murky, or partially concealed. But truth does not negotiate or tiptoe. It remains solid and discloses. And now they're stuck trying to find out how to exist in a world where their lives can't breathe because you are the truth. And that reality speaks louder than any explanation or justification they might make. A number. They had no fear of what you knew. They were afraid of what you may expose. They weren't just terrified of your education. They were scared of what you might say. It's one thing to have secrets buried deep, but it's a very new level of menace when someone goes about with the ability to reveal every single one of them. Your presence alone shakes the frail society they established with falsehoods, half-truths, and manipulation. You are not merely a spectator. You are a walking disturbance. Every step you take disturbs the foundation they use to maintain control. What irritates them the most is that you don't have to say anything to generate havoc. Your silence speaks louder than any act or phrase they do. They keep an eye on you, waiting for a slip-up, confirmation, or any indication that you may reveal them. But you hold back, not because you are unaware, but because your restraint is a strength they do not recognize. They understand that the weight of what you may divulge sits over them like a storm cloud, ready to explode at any time. Their whole life is dependent on the falsehoods they have carefully cultivated. And you're the antithesis that refuses to fit. You don't follow their rules, and that makes you dangerous. Not because you're loud or confrontational, but because you symbolize an obvious truth that threatens to upend their whole universe. They are concerned about what you may expose not just to them, but also to others. And that terror keeps them on edge, rushing to hide their footprints before your calm storm bursts out. Finally, they do not fear your expertise. They are fearful of your ability to uncover it. And that terror is what really shakes people to their core. A number. Your knowledge didn't just expose them. It exposed the mechanism that was behind them. Your intelligence extended well beyond catching someone in a falsehood or identifying their selfish behavior. You glimpsed the greater picture, the unseen threads and secret forces that tug the scenes behind a curtain. It wasn't simply about who deceived or lied to you directly. You realized how they were caught up in a far deeper system, functioning as puppets without even recognizing it. They weren't just lousy actors. They were part of a complex network of spiritual hierarchies, generational curses, and ancestral scars that had thrived in the misery and quiet for decades. Your capacity to see through this is not just keen, but deep. You were not only exposing individual conduct, you were exposing whole patterns of dishonesty and control. You pulled back layers that most people are unaware of, exposing how the past still shapes the present via unseen links. This is why your accuracy surprises them. It is not only that you saved their lives, you demolished the system that spawned those falsehoods in the first place. When they realize you're not just reading their narrative, but the whole library of evil they attempted to bury, they are dumbfounded. They can't argue with it or flee from it since it's larger than them. You are revealing something much more threatening to their authority than any one fact. It revealed the underlying reason, which is the most concerning aspect. You did more than simply break a case. You decrypted the whole operation. In the end, what genuinely rattles them isn't just that you saw through their masks or exposed their falsehoods. It's that you remained unharmed, a living witness to a greater reality. They were incapable of controlling or corrupting. Your presence alone became their reckoning, an unsaid challenge to every shade they attempted to hide behind. They miscalculated what it meant to carry truth so deeply ingrained that it does not need shouting. Only lived. And the most powerful weapon you have is not wrath or retribution, but steadfast clarity and a calm, unshakable knowledge. They're still scurrying, trying to figure out how you were always one step ahead. Your remarks hit with surgical accuracy. How your stillness rang louder than that frenzied scream. However, the fact is straightforward. Your power was not based on being loud or forceful. It was about being genuine in a world of illusions, about standing so solidly in your own light that their darkness couldn't exist in the same room. You weren't just a player in their game. You were the unexpected force who altered the rules without anybody noticing. And although they are startled, concerned, and even afraid, you have stepped beyond their grasp since you did not just expose a person or a falsehood. You uncovered a whole system based on deceit, fear, and control. You peeled back the layers that nobody else dared to touch. You held a mirror so clear and unwavering that it revealed not just their reality, but also the communal scars and patterns that fueled their strength. It's not only about winning a war. It's about walking away, knowing that your soul performed a surveillance operation they never saw coming. That your knowledge was not paranoia, but divine placement, and that your sheer presence crushed illusions without a single angry word said. You are the quiet storm, the silent revolution, and the personification of truth that cannot be hushed. So let them be astonished. Allow them to be blown away by your precision. Because you have done more than just live. You've become live evidence that truth is not only real, but invisible and unstoppable. And it is what scares them the most. If this message spoke to you and opened new doors in your knowledge, don't keep it to yourself. Click the subscribe button to remain connected to more truths that go deeper than surface noise. I like this video. If it shifted your viewpoint, please share your thoughts or experiences in the comment section below. Your voice counts here, so share it with those who need to hear it right now. Because the correct words at the right moment may transform everything. We are creating a community in which the truth is not concealed and power is recovered. So join us, stay alert, and help keep this movement alive. God bless you.